Welcome to Tea Time. Welcome, everyone. Giving everyone else a second to get all tuned in. Here come the little girl. She haven't been near me, and now she wants to run over here because it's tea time. Well, first and foremost, I do want to thank you, Donald. I do want to say a prayer for tea time. Just praying a shield of protection all over tea time and around tea time. We had a lot of weird guests that jumped on um, last week, and for um, for the past almost 2 years. I know we're over a year and a half of doing tea time. We have never had anything as strange. So that was definitely something different. So we want to cast those out before they can get started. And then I know how to delete them as soon as they join in. We can exit them out. So welcome to Tea Time with Kitty. Welcome. I hope you are enjoying your week so far. I know that daylight savings time is next month. And hey, sis, and to my understanding, we'll be getting a little bit more sleep. And Yanni actually told me that when the daylight changes this time, hey Yanni, hey Shamika, that it won't be changing back. So when it does like a time change this time, this will be the last time change. I didn't know that. Didn't know if you all knew that, but the time zone will not be changing. So I guess we'll be going into daylight savings time. It'll get lighter earlier. And normally they change like twice a year. I think it's in November and March. But when it makes the change this time, it will be staying in place. So looking forward to that. Before we get into today's topic, I do want to do a few birthday shout outs to my niece Chloe and Blair. Blair turned 4 on yesterday, and Chloe turned 11 on today. So definitely want to give birthday shout outs to them. And I do want to spend a little time talking about the incident where the lady was pushed off the bus before we go into the topics by some teenagers. And just the whole thing, when we think about someone owning a car, we always looked at that as a oh gosh, help me with the word. Hey, now we always look at having a car as kind of like a luxury, I would say. But with the types of things that goes on the train and the buses now, it's almost as if it is a necessity. Like it's like something that you have to have. So I don't know what the lady said to the young guys. Or what actually happened, but what I do know is that it, from my understanding of it, is that it could have been handled a little differently, right? So those young people have parents, they have grandparents, aunts and uncles, or I will hope that they have someone that's important to them in their family, where one of them could have just told the other one or the other few to go ahead. So what is your take on that before we get into today's topic? What is it that we can do um, with teenagers, because it's almost as if they're just taking over the world and we're not safe in areas that's so familiar to us because of their behavior. So if anyone heard of that story or have any insight on that story as to what happened, just so sad, so tragic that you can't even be on a bus. I don't think she was harmed as much because I don't think the bus was moving when they pushed her off. But just hearing that, just breaks your heart over and over again. That we definitely have to stay prayed up and well fed. I know just this weekend I did have an opportunity to attend the 14th annual gospel concert, and it was at Reed Temple Church. So this is going to my third weekend of just having been spiritually fed because of everything that's going on in the world today. So if anyone saw that story or heard of that story and have any input before we get into today's topic, and you want to share anything as it relates to that, we all know that we need prayer. We all know that the kids need discipline. But how do we just maneuver around day to day in these situations? Okay. So If anyone wanted to take a second to drop into it, and then if not, I'll go right into my topic. But please, please, please make sure that you are staying safe. And again, welcome, welcome, welcome to tea time, and let us get into our topic if no one has anything else. So today's topic is about African American, hey real African American men, black men, fathers. It doesn't have to just be fathers, but just the men. Hey sis, just the men in your life in general, being involved, right? So let me read down this comment, then I'll come back to it. We need to discipline them more. I believe teens have so much freedom, and majority of that is because the parents and many no father figures are there. We need more serious laws as well for teens. So yeah, that is a definitely a topic, Donald, and hopefully we'll be letting you allow with another young person to come forward and just hear from their eyes on how some of these kids should be punished. Because when you're older saying it doesn't hit the same because first thing they're gonna say, well, you all were there one time, but that was one time. But having someone that's present and is different. So getting back to the topic, so just talking about having been present, and this was laid in my life on my heart, and it's going to be a two-part. So Friday we went to the pumpkin patch with Nala school. So me, Pookie, and Nala all went to the pumpkin patch, and Nala's we met Nala's school there, right? And because they didn't allow the chaperones to ride, you had to actually drive out, and it probably had a lot to do with COVID. But even with the daycare that Yari just started, and woo, Yari started school on Monday, right? And I know that it's two males that work at Yari school, right? And when I first seen it, I was a little like, oh, no, about this. But tell me, how do you feel? And I'm seeing it more and more. I didn't see it at Nala's old daycare, but are you all seeing more males working inside of childcare settings? Now, I always know that we had male teachers. I definitely remember having male teachers once I got to junior high school. And of course, high school, and college, you see a lot of male presence. However, when it comes to daycare, preschool or early stages in elementary, we don't see a lot of male educators, maybe a gym teacher, maybe a music teacher. But has anyone else noticed that there has been a great increase in males working? Because I mean, like, I never seen so many males working in daycares. Have anyone else noticed that there has definitely been an increase with that? An increase was, so we know that they've always been in college, high school, junior high school, very little in elementary. You will see a few in elementary, maybe the principal, gym teacher, or the music teacher or art teacher. But just being like having teachers in the school system, you always see more female educators than male, right? So do you notice that you are now seeing those male educators in childcare centers, and it's also an increase in elementary? So while you all are waiting to respond to that, so again, it had me a little bit on the little bit uncomfortable seeing that, because like, oh, but we have to really change our way of thinking. And someone said to me yesterday at my job about how our agencies in whole, discriminate towards men. Like we always say, we want more male present, but sometimes when we get that male presence, we don't know what to do with it. We're going to talk about that into two different parts to hear today on Tea Time. So the first part is, seeing them in the daycare, seeing them in the elementary setting, seeing the amount of fathers. Kudos to the amount of fathers that was on the pumpkin patch trip just Friday. So it's always good to see active fathers involved, right? Always good to see active fathers involved. So even though I was going with this topic about talking about males and being more involved, I do want to share one little catch I got to add to before we get into the other part of that. But let's see what Mika has to say. I think their presence, a vetted male figure, is important. Definitely very important, and I know that it's more and more and more important. But I just didn't see them as much in elementary and daycare settings as I'm seeing them now. And these are young guys, not old men, Both of the guys at Yari School are young guys, and the guy that made me comfortable when we first visited daycare was the fact that his spirit reminded me so much of Donald, right? So I said, let me see Donald in him, and then I know everything's going to be okay. And we shouldn't be hesitant because females can be very, very important, right? But when you think about it, when I was raised, from my mom and grandma, it made you think that men, touch little girls, and there's all these types of things that's programmed in your head as a child, and you don't understand how much they infect you on how you deal with men and growing up and men in your adulthood, right? So I definitely want to give kudos to those fathers on a trip. Like there were more fathers at the pumpkin patch than mothers, right? I also want to make sure I point out to parents. It was a little boy on a it was a little boy standing on the railing, like the little railing that they had while we were in line to get on the hayride. And the male teacher snatched him down, didn't really harm, but snatched him down quick. And he had said, you know, your parents should have came on a trip with you, right? And I just definitely want to make sure I make that statement to my parents here today on tea time. If you have smaller children, right, and we can't always be there, it could be a new job, something, a meeting, something that we can't change. So we can't always go on a trip with our child. But in the event that we cannot go on a trip with our child, it is very important that we try to, if we can, identify a family member that can go with our child. If nothing else failed, be real selective about if that daycare is still open, because you can't make me be available. You can't make me send my child on a trip. So even though they'll try to say it, you want to get clarity on that. Is any kid staying back? Because I would rather my child stay back than go on a trip without me, right? And the reason why this is being said is because when they're little children, they require a lot of attention, and they like to get into everything. They like to wander off and all these types of things. And then you have that child that's a little busier or a little bad, right? And that child always need a parent to go somewhere with them. So parents, when don't go with them, just know that your child may not always be in good hands, because it's a little different when they're inside of a closed setting as opposed to an outside setting. And you have to go through the experience of your child left somewhere, getting their own pulled out place, um, or just um, or just being mistreated as a whole. And I wouldn't even say, maybe I shouldn't use the word mistreat, right? Because I don't want to think that it's that harsh, but the fact that they won't be getting the attention that they need. So try to be mindful of that. And that's why it's so important as parents, and I had to learn this too, that you truly, truly manage your leave. You manage your leave, and we know things happens and things come up, but it's very important that you manage your leave for such a time as this, right? Because when it's time for your child to go on a field trip and do other activities, you want to be there and be involved. You never want to have to choose between you having to be leave without pay and enjoying a fun event with your child. So please think about that. Please definitely take that into consideration when you're utilizing your leave. That is something that you're sharing with your child. So you want to make sure that you have adequate enough leave in the event that they have an activity, or it could even be them being sick or something of that nature. So make sure that you are involved in what's going on, especially on these settings, because he snatched that little boy down and said he was bad. And I seen another person really wasn't being mean, but it was a toddler, and she was overwhelmed and she pulled one toddler by the arm. So just know that things like that, when they look up and see a parent, they be kind of shocked, and then they'll try to, like smile at it or tune it down a little bit. But try to take advantage and do some of those outings with your children. I know this one right here was really challenging because Nyla School, from where Nyla School is, and it was at Cox Farm. So that was really challenging because if a parent didn't have a car or have someone that could drive them, they wouldn't have been able to go because the school was not allowing anyone to chaperone and ride with them. So that's just a food for thought. Be mindful of that when planning, when you taking off all those nice summer days, having a good time as an adult. Make sure you leave a little bit of time in, so if your child needs to go to the pumpkin patch or go see Santa Claus, that you can be a little bit more involved with it. So we talked about the male present in the daycare setting, in the elementary setting, but I want to talk about how it spills over into your life, right? I want to talk about, and I want some women to join me here, just talking about how effective your life have been, or things that you have seen in your life as it relates to males that has been like a great impact. Now, when we're talking about males, it does not have to be your dad. Of course, it's not Father's Day. That's the first thing Shamika said to me about my topic. Of course, it's not Spouse Day. So we're not talking about the spouse, but we're just talking about that male presence that's so important. So again, I shared that I came from a woman dominant family, right? And I see so much on how it has affected me when I'm interacting in my relationships, right? And it's not, and I wouldn't just say relationship meaning like a spouse type of thing to take back and take a look, but just an overall what my controlling ways and my ways that even though I may tend to be a very free-hearted person, but it kind of can be tit for tat and things like that. So some things that I have learned now that I'm able to actually receive it, some things that I need to do differently in my life, right? So because my grandmother, I believe my grandma was married, but she wasn't married when I was born. I think it was before I was born, right? And then my mom wasn't. So you that's what I mean, coming from a female dominant household, right? And when I say this, it's not to tell women to run out and get married, because God definitely don't want you marrying the wrong person, right? So let's definitely put that out, because marrying the wrong person is almost equivalent to not being married at all. You definitely have to be equally yoked. Um, and there's some other things that have to line up, not just someone to have a good sexual intercourse with, not just someone to have occasional fun with, but to make sure you're equally yoked. And most of the time, you notice that you're equally yoked with someone, you see growth in your life and that person's life. So if you see that your life at a just staggering along, and you don't see any true growth, no, everyone is not going to be able to go next year and get married and go buy a single family home and go buy a Tesla, right? So we're not speaking on that, but it can be growth. Someone supporting you while you're furthering your education, someone supporting you as you transition through jobs, right? So we definitely want to look at that, because it's very important, and not just male, but I'm a female, so my relationship is with a male. But not just that, it could be a male, with a female. So make sure when you're examining that person, that that person brings something to your life, right? And although you may have to go on at some point in your life without the person, you still can reflect on the values that the person added, right? So again, coming from a dominant female household, I had learned to make decisions solely for myself, right? Solely for myself, how I want to do it, when I want to do it, and even during the times that I've had a spouse, right? And that's why it's so important to know that that person has to be the person for you, right? And when you don't respect that person, you kind of operate out of order anyway. So it takes a lot when you have an encounter with a man, like a real man, right? And you have to kind of like put your ways behind you to appreciate that male's presence, because like I said, we're good at saying, oh, we want the father there, we want the spouse there, we want all these things there. But then we as women sometimes are very controlling, although we say we want those things there, right? So let me see what Donald has to say, then I'll come back. Anyone else have anything, just chime in. You don't have to wait. We're pretty much just talking about having a male present. And I probably should have put an effective male present. And we talked about seeing male presence in daycares and elementary, early childhood, seeing their presence more, and that's always saying that's what we need and what we want, but sometimes how we feel differently when they are that person being there, right? I think a male presence is really needed now, because you have so many young males that really don't have a father figure, but for others the difference is there, because with a male it's more of a balance, and it's definitely more of a balance. So do anyone have any input as it relates to that? Like, has it anybody that has like was raised from like a predominantly male household, or you may have been raised by a single mother? Because I think that that is something that definitely we need to work on as African American women. And I'm going to be having a topic on that soon as it relates to when we're dating. It's not the same dating when you're in college, or the not same dating when you're a young adult, but when you're dating as a woman with children, or when you're dating as a man with children, you're not just dating that person, but you're also dating a potential step parent. And that's going to be an upcoming topic soon, right? But just thinking about that now, do you ever feel, and this can be for some people that could be married, right? So you don't have to only be single, you could be married. Do you feel that your controlling ways affect your healthy relationship with your male counterpart, right? And um I know that sometimes males may date males, but right now we're talking from the female perspective, because African American women are very dominant. We're very dominant. We can be very controlling, even though it's hard to admit. And being controlling, and that's part of the phase that I went through with it. Being controlling is all bad. It's just having some limits with boundaries, right? Trying to move those boundaries in and work around them, and and gather a better understanding. But Donald, how do you feel as it relates to that? Like, do you feel like African American women are controlling? And do you feel like it has anything to do with the type of male presence? Because I noticed that most females that have a really good relationship with their dad, and I like to think that I have a relationship with my dad, but I didn't grow up in the household with my dad, and that's different. Our relationship became stronger when I was older, right? But do you feel that when women are not raised by men, that it definitely affects them, right? And what I mean by that, when we say that, is because men is like a safety net. Like, they're the ones that make you feel safe at night. They're the one that brings some closure to your day. All these types of good things that daddy does as you're a little girl, or it could be stepdaddy or uncle or granddad, whoever's in the house with you, right? But as it relates to as it relates to not having that household, it tends for women to watch out for one another, right? And then that's what make us want all the control, make us want all the control, nonstop control, right? And that's how we get to that place in life, right? So we want to work on that. Again, Donald, I don't know if Pookie is on yet, but Donald, I know that you're on. Do you truly feel that it definitely affects women when they're raised by a woman as opposed to a man in their relationships? Anyone else can chime in whenever they're ready. I'll just wait and receive your response and how you deal with that. And I definitely know that men don't necessarily want a weak woman, and they don't want a woman to not show that they care or not show any affection. But I just want to know, like, when you're raised by a woman, do you feel that affects your relationship with men as you grow older? So that's the question that we have on the table at this time. Okay, I blame the parents because I know for a fact my teenage boys would never engage in anything like that when I'm not around. Oh, what? Trey, did you just make your comment or did it come in late? Definitely. Okay, definitely. I just wanted to. So Trail is commenting on the importance um of you instilling certain things in your children and knowing for a fact. And I definitely like that because I've always been that type of parent. And even though I may not feel like that about all of them, I definitely can identify the ones that I do feel that way about. So that's very important. But Trail, but you just chiming in. Do you feel women that's raised by women in a household with no father present or very limited male present, do you feel that affect women as they grow older in their relationship with men? Do you have any thoughts on that? Sherelle, waiting to hear from you. Oh, thank you. I believe it does with certain females because they become more dominant. That's what I'm looking for, niece. Thank you. That's what I'm looking for. It makes them become more dominant, right? So, Sherelle, do you have any idea how we can get back some of that dominant behavior and be a little bit more feminine, not being a pushover, but do you know what that would look like to give back some of that, right? They don't know how to adapt and adjust when they have a man who's dominant because they're never had a dominant fit. That Donald, that could be so key right there, right? Still bringing it in. That could be so key because you've always, and I feel like that's how I had to be. I always had to make sure I was good, right? As a young child, I always had to make sure my mom was good, my brothers was good, and my kids, right? So it's really hard to turn that off, right? So that's something that I'm definitely working on. Anyone else, do you feel that women that's raised by women tend to have a more challenging time in their adulthood being with a male? Would anyone else that have a take on that? Because we get to the point where we're so used to doing everything ourselves. I agree. I used to not respect men. I was there, Neek. I was there. Thank you so much. I was there, and I didn't even know I was there. But now it's some men I would never try that with. It depends on the man. Okay, and I've heard people say that. Thank you so much for pointing that out. I've heard people say that a lot, um that dominant women require a certain type of man. Like you have to be a certain type of man to put up with a woman. And talking about not respecting men, I know I was at that place. And it wasn't even from like a bad place. It was almost not intentional at all that I used to do it. But what it was is that I had no reason to kind of respect them, right? Because I always feel like I had it all. I had all the answers. I seen my grandmother do it. She ran a whole household, fed everybody. I seen my mother do it, even though she wasn't as more of a into the community with bringing everybody in, but I seen her do it with us. So I felt that I could do it myself, right? I had all the answers myself and didn't know that how much that could affect me going into your adulthood when you're ready to settle. And I know that Daniel will often tell me, don't nobody want nobody harder than them or more, what is it, more gangster than them, right? So that, that definitely does make a difference. Definitely did not read anyone else. Mello and Hassan had a male child care provider when they was in daycare. Wow. So do you feel that he was affected? Because I know Pookie had one at two daycares, but they were like the drivers. They drove the kids places, right? So I'm glad. So and it was Hassan. Also, the older ones had one. Okay, so that was many years ago. Okay, yes, you have to get used to the male figure. Take it on rows too, and learn to let your wall down. Right, and that can be so like so what is it saying? Easily said than done, right? So easily said than done. But it sounds like a lot of us do understand that, and I guess it's tapping into your truth. I know my sister Mika, one time when we had a sister circle anniversary, I think that she talked about tapping into your truth, living your truth, right? And how it's so important. So when you know these things about you, how do you? So do you just be like, I'm never gonna have a relationship, it's not gonna work, or how do you really get help, like outside of therapy, right? Because I started a therapy like with just listening to courses, right? But the thing about therapy for me, and this is for me, right? The thing about therapy, and I'm trying to overcome all of this stuff going on. But the thing about therapy for me, I can't explain to a therapist what my issues are. I need my spouse to explain to them what my issues are. And I know you all say, oh, you got to explain your own. No, because if I have to explain it, I'm going to kind of sugarcoat it because I am not going to water myself down, right? And some people are good at being honest, being in their truth. So I know my truth. I identify it. I understand it, right? But I'm not willing to give somebody my whole truth. As opposed to if I had a spouse that would go to the session with me and would tell them what I'm not able to say. I think it's one way that I think I could possibly get better. I really do. Do anyone else have any insight on another way that you feel like, or if it's any males on here? I know Donald chimed in. Looking for some of the other males that join us to chime in. How do you deal with a dominant woman? Like if does it is it based on how much you care about her and maybe you can get through it and get by it, or is it something that you just can't get over, right, because and like me, I know that now I'm realizing that I am dominant, and I know that I'm controlling, and I think about things that I do to my children. So parents, pay attention to that too. Think about things that I do to my children to control them. Like I may not have like a phone time that their phones have to be turned in by for school, but if they do something, that's like the first thing that I'll take because I know that it's important to them, right? No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm gonna hit you where it hurt at. So those are some things that I am truly working on. I definitely want to commend the men that has the patience to really be at someone's side when they're going through this because it is overwhelming. It is overwhelming. And, like you want to change your ways, and I don't want to be this controller, but to be honest, it's kind of all you know. Like if you have been the sole provider for your family, it becomes all that you know. Um, who's Parkland 35? Is that Pookie? Okay, so Pookie said it helps having a dominant woman in your life. I think this is Pookie, but he be having another name sometimes too. Okay, all right. So you feel that it helps having a dominant woman in your life. So do you feel that your mom was dominant? Because I'm wondering, do that make it easier for you having a dominant mom that you can appreciate a dominant woman, or is there anybody else? That may have input as it relates to that with someone being dominant. So do you all agree that like dominant and bossy and control all runs together? Do you all agree that all of those things probably run together? That is really different. Like having a dominant woman in your life, that is very it does, because that can make you become more of a man. So Donald, are you saying that it makes you become more of a man by having a dominant woman, or pretty much every female has played a part from my mom, sister, aunt, etc. Especially if you know your child has behavior issues. Yeah, just so yeah, so definitely, right? So even with dealing with a dominant female and having the dominant issues and things that they come from, and I think a lot of times we don't want to be as dominant as we are. We don't really want to be that way. But I think that with all that we take on, I think that it's very, very, very important that African American women, African American men appreciate their African American sisters. And I'm not just talking about your mom, your mom children, right? I'm talking about your sisters in general, like your sisters that you work with, that you go to school with. I think it's very important that we learn to appreciate them, because a lot of times it's a history behind the control. It's a history behind the dominant behavior, right? And are you willing to overlook those things, or not overlook, because that's not good because it'll keep coming back, but are you willing to merge those things together, right? Merge it together with what you both have going on, because everybody has stuff, right. Everybody has stuff. So do you try to merge them together and own it together and work through it together? I think that's the most important point. So again, I definitely want to commend all the fathers, uncles, granddads, whoever those males were that was out at the pumpkin patch this Friday with the school chaperoning. I am always impressed when I see a huge male present. I definitely want to shout out the school systems for having more males involved, as well as the child care. I think those foundations are so important, because some children don't have fathers at home. So that gives them a chance to see men in a healthy form, interact in real time, and they can appreciate that. I think that because they will challenge you mentally to see if you can really be a man, a dominant man, because if you want them to be your prize, you need to put in the work for them to be yours. Thank you so much, Donald. That was so motivating. So motivating. So, as we wrap up tea time, thank you all so much for sipping with me today. The weather is really changing, so I'm going to be moving from cold tea back to hot tea and hot chocolate. We're going to get some more topics underway, but I definitely wanted to share for my therapeutic session this time on how, and it's not just probably me, it could be other sisters out there as well, of how it affects us by being overly dominant, overly controlling, overly bossy, and sometimes even a little vindictive when things don't come our way. And how important it is for us to work on those things, right? So if that's you, let's try to reclaim the African American men and respect them for the men that we know that they should be and that they can be, in whatever position they're in. You know, you may be making more than them, or they could be making more than you, or may be in in a more important role financially. It's very important for us to understand that no amount of money or a job title is more important to coming together and appreciating your mate and doing what's best to make it work for you all and to leave the outside on the outside. So definitely want to make sure you all take that back, whether you're married, single, in between. It's very important to learn to work and coexist with your spouse and share everything with them and allow them to be involved. Okay. So, again, thank you so much for sipping with a sister, and I look forward to seeing you all on next Wednesday.